Easy data generation using data templates. So what we're going to do is create some data templates. We are going to extract some real data from our development environment, and we're going to create, in effect, a data clone. Once we've captured this data, you can edit it and play around with it to your heart's content using our backend data lists. And from that, we will automatically create you a data generation rule set, and that rule set can then be used to push the data into any environment you want, as many times as you want, and you can then add in as much parameterization and any additional data generation functions that you need to create the data. The advantage of this, of course, is that you can capture complex data, you can create subtle variations of data by manipulating the back-end lists. You could copy rare data and create multiple versions of that rare data, or you could pull out complex and difficult to create bug data, i.e. data that is causing a bug, and then create that in lower environments and have multiple copies of it, allowing you to change your code and test against the same, as in the same characteristics of the data, in your development environments. So here's a quick slide on how it works. So we have a source database, most likely a development or a pre-prod, a QA environment. And what we do is we extract the data that you're interested in, and we pull that in, and we actually store that data inside our repository. And that looks very much like that, like data that you would recognize. Then what we can do is edit that template data, and that's kind of the core point here, in that you can adjust the data with real values and play around with them to as much as you like. You can also then add in any parameters and data functions, which is then going to create you a form, and that form then can be adjusted to take the original data and overlay any changes that the user requires. However, it is fundamentally based upon the original extracted data. Once you do that, we'll pull in the stored data, add in the parameters, and then push that data into your target environments. So let's have a look to see how it's done. So you start with a basic data generation activity, which of course has a generation rule set attached to it. Now we have the tables that we are interested in using, and in this case we're going to be pulling out a supplier category and cloning a category, all its suppliers, purchase orders and purchase order lines, etc. If we take a look at the ER diagram, you can see there are a number of internal relationships between the 5 tables we've selected. If we go back to the data activity, you'll see search and create data templates in the actions, and we select that. So for the first table in the rule set, we need to enter a where clause, in this case supplier category ID equals 4. Let's fire the job off. You'll see in the message line the SQL that's being issued as it works its way across from the supplier category out into the other tables. And the job is finished. And if we take a look at the extracted data, you'll see that we've extracted the categories, purchase orders, transactions, etc. Now you'll see that there are a number of different ways to get through to the same tables. You see transactions you can go through the purchase orders or directly from the suppliers. At this stage you can edit these and have a quick look at them to make sure that you've pulled out the correct data, and in fact if you want to you can actually edit the CSVs. What we're going to do next is we're going to upload this data back into the repository and attach it to the data activity. Okay, so to do this, go back to search and create data templates and choose the second drop-down, upload the CSV. Go and find the CSV. And it's a zip file. We're going to create some new lists. If you've got any extra data, you can override the lists if they already exist. Click execute. And the job is finished. Let's just refresh the activity. And you'll see the activity now has some lists attached to it. Let's go and have a quick look. So there's our category. You'll see it's got category D4. That doesn't particularly matter. If you go and look at the suppliers, you'll see category D4, which is how we link it together. Again, supplier ID. And that links down into purchase orders, like so. Now you can edit these. You can add rows to them. You can pretty much do anything you like to them. And then we go into the next part, which is to create our generation rule set, which matches with the lists. So we click on Rule Set Accelerators. Now there's lots of different accelerators which will automatically build your rule set for you. The one we're interested in here is use template lists to seed the publish. And you fill this in. Now there are a number of different templates that we're going to be using, and you can edit these if you want to. If you click on the drop down, for the most part it just depends on which database you're going to be connecting to, because that's how new keys are allocated, sometimes sequences, sometimes identity columns. In this case it's a Postgres database. We click on execute and that will update our generation rule set. So that's finished. Now let's look at the basic rule set. You'll see it's defined all the variables we need. You don't need to worry about the majority of them. And we come in and we'll see it's getting the data from an external list, apart from when we are assigning new keys, and then we will go and use our cross-referencing capability so that we make sure that we assign consistent keys across all of the tables. Now I'm going to do a bit more work on it to improve the rule set, to parameterize it up. So I've added in a few extra parameters. We're going to actually type in the name of the supplier category when we create it. I've hard-coded a few values, changed a few date to use today's date. For the supplier name, I've added in the original supplier, but I've added in -template clone at the end, so it's kind of obvious where it's come from. And I've been up and down, just adding in a few extra parameterizations. If we go back into our activity, I've created all of the plumbing that you need, and obviously the main one is the execution form, so let's just submit that. We're going to say Hughes category, and we're going to pick a date. Let's just do it. Actually, we're going to do some testing on Monday, so I'm going to just do that then. Click on execute, and that will extract the data from the lists. It will assign any new keys depending on the target database you're connecting to. It will apply any parameterization to the data and then push the data into the database. So let's have a look to see what it did. And the data matches with the number of rows that we got from our template. Obviously, if you did a repeater, you would have more of them multiplied by the number of repeaters. And if we take a look at the results and look at our categories, to assign a new number, 173, Hughes category, and then if we look at suppliers, it's got 48, obviously matching with the supplier from here. So that is how you go from taking some existing data, turning it into a template, and then pushing that data out on demand into any environment that you need. So if you have any questions or you'd like to give it a try, feel free to get in touch.